Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to this transnational high-level academic industry symposium that is titled Challenges and Enablers in the Latin America Construction Industry, where we examine how to increase the number of women in construction and mining trades in the Latin American region. So my name is Temitope Egbelakin, but please feel free to call me Temi so that you don't have to grind your teeth. I am the CI for this project and also will be your facilitator for this roundtable discussion. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands within our footprint areas, Awakabal, Dankijon, Biripai, Waremi, Wonarua, and the Iroa nations. I also pay my respect to the wisdoms of our elders past and present. Now to the symposium. So the purpose of this symposium, of these high-level roundtable presentations and discussion is to address the underrepresentation of women in construction trades in Latin America region. From our speakers, we've understood that this problem is global, it's everywhere, whether you are in Australia, whether you're in Latin America, or you're in the US, or you're anywhere in the world, women have always been underrepresented in industry that has been tagged as male-dominated sectors. So part of the work we want to do today is actually focusing on the Latin America region to see how we can actually increase the representation of women, both at the entry, middle level, and also senior management in construction trades in the Latin American region. So basically, we'll be examining the regional challenges and opportunities to increase women participation and also to facilitate regional exchange of knowledge and bridge fragmented value chains, and also learn from each other how we can help our women in our region or in our country, wherever we are, to be fully represented in this industry. So we have a couple of questions that will be passing through to all the speakers or all our members of the panelists. And also, I would like to invite all our panelists to put on their video, and please come forward to help with some of the questions. So we got a range of questions that I will be asking each member of the panelists, but if you want to contribute or you have some things to contribute, please use the raise hand button to let me know that you are willing to contribute to a particular question that has been thrown to another speaker. Thank you again, and everyone, welcome. So I'm going to start with some of the issues that have been raised. It's very, very interesting to see that a lot of our speakers have talked about some of the challenges of women underrepresentation. And I was quite impressed that these issues are all in all the countries. And for instance, examples of these challenges that has been brought up here, we have gender stereotypes. What constitutes women's work? What can women do in the construction? And what load can we carry? What exactly can women do to contribute to this? Which is a little bit of interesting topic. Then also, women and youngest lack exposure and experience to trade vocations. So a lot of work has been done, whether by research or implementation through different organizations. But it's surprising or not surprising that this problem still exists. So definitely there's a gap in what we are doing because we have not been able to achieve our purpose. Then a lot of issues we also talked about work-life balance, and also that women doesn't have a good work-life balance in the industry, and what can we do to make it work better for them. The issue of income gaps was also raised. Slow career progression was also identified. And importantly is the socio-cultural issues, such as the perception of women as being an ultimate or a good worker, a good representative in the industry was raised. Then one thing I found very important is also the lack of connection between employers and apprentices, or employers and women trades, and also the representation of tradeswomen in the media. I think one of the speakers touched, I think was Christine, who touched about that. There was an experiment that they asked kids to draw who a painter looks like, and a lot of them begin to draw men. This particularly happened to me. I have a 7-year-old son. When he was 3, and then they were talking about firefighters in his daycare, and I was telling him, oh, I do climb ladders and I can do this. He said, no, mommy, only men should do that. And I was so shocked because I'm an architect. I do a lot of hands in the house, and it's still my own son who's seen me do this does not even perceive me as somebody who can actually, be a firefighter or work in the construction. He couldn't believe that I'm a builder. That was when he was 3 years old. So these are some of the things that actually motivated me to actually want to be part of this cultural change. So for our first question, I'll be addressing this to Ms. Christine. I would just want to know, because we've talked about all these challenges, where do we go from here? How do we overcome some of these challenges that have been discussed by our presenters, that has even been established in literature? And I wanted to also talk about the roles of the government or industry organizations, academic and public, to overcome some of these challenges that have been addressed so far.
Well, thank you. And I think you must have been reading our strategic plan, because that's exactly what we're about to do. Because, and Dr. Sylvia, thank you, because I think your last presentation just nailed all the things we are about to do. And we are tackling the issues from all different facets. So right down from, we are literally writing our own children's book series to start educating primary school students on what the industry looks like, and that is men and women work in industry. So we're going to have not only Bob the Builder, but we'll come up. I can't release the character's name just yet, but we're starting young. For our immediate strategic plan, what we need to see, what we want to see, and what we're focusing on is advocacy, on education and on community. And the advocacy part goes to government and industry. So there's no point pointing the finger at just government or just industry. We know that government is one of the biggest users of the construction industry, and if they're not on board, so for example, and I think the example of having requirements in PPPs where we say you must, and we're not just targets, I'm saying you must have X amount of women employed, and that is just that is, or you're in breach of your contract. Now, industry has come back, and particularly, because I talk to industry about this all the time, they say, oh, that you're setting an impossible task because there's no pipeline of women. And my answer to that is, well, that's also your fault, because what are you doing about ensuring that there is a pipeline of women? So pathway programs, going to schools and saying, particularly tradeswomen, because we're only at 2%, excellent, we're going to take you out of high school and we are going to hook you up with employers and start providing your apprenticeship whilst you're in high school. So when you finish high school, you will have a job to walk straight into. Now, we also recognise that women going into those roles will be probably the only ones out of a group of men. So organisations like NAWIC will set them up with a mentor and say, right, we will shepherd you through this process. Then in high schools, you're saying excellent, and universities. So how many of you are studying engineering? Lovely. How many of you are actually going to finish your degree, and how many of you are going to go into the workforce? If you have contracts that require taking on students and student engineers, and we've done that with the Light Rail project here in Canberra, we insisted that there be X amount of women or female engineers who worked on the project, or they're in breach of their contract. So that education and that advocacy has to be at both industry and at government, but industry also needs to be educated. And I think that is half the problem. There are a lot of men, when we approach industry, they said, we want to do the right thing, we just don't know how. So actually having conversations with men in senior leadership roles saying, and this is how you engage with a woman. I don't know, toilets on site would be a nice start. It's that simple. So, but they don't see it, they don't get it. They are so in their little lane. But if you stop to ask them, and I find it quite interesting when you talk about male champions of change, which is one organisation that talks about getting more women into organisations, you ask every single one of them why they put their hand up. Suddenly they had daughters who were trying to get into the industry, and they realised what the issues were. Their daughters. So they were blind to it until their daughter wanted to get in the industry. So education, advocacy, education, both government and industry.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. That was interesting to see that this is what we're doing here, although it's in South America, is very, very pivotal to what is happening in Australia. And I'm hoping that there will be that synergy between the regions, between the Latin American and also Australia, to be able to see how we can actually work together, because we already started some work in that. I would like to invite Ms. Karina Malaga to give us some perspective from the Latin America on what are those things what can we do to overcome some of these challenges? Ms. Karina?
Thank you, Demi. Bueno, yo coincido con Christine. I share ideas with Christine. En Perú, el Estado, el gobierno no está muy interesado en introducir a las mujeres en la construcción, es la verdad, ¿no? los altos rangos en el Perú son todos de hombres. Hay muy pocas mujeres y en construcción menos. Lo que nos ha dado mucho resultado a nosotros es trabajar con organizaciones de mujeres. Y como decía Christine, con las chicas del colegio. Es increíble cómo uno va a los colegios, y hemos ido mucho, y les pregunta qué quiere ser. Y ellas quieren ser mamás o trabajar en lo que, si sus padres tienen negocios, o maestras, o policías, porque en el Perú no te pueden despedir de policía, sales y tienes un sueldo. Pero cuando ven otras mujeres que han logrado otros puestos, y cuando van algunas a darles testimonio y contarles y decirles, yo pude hacer otra cosa, y yo tampoco tuve recursos y logré otra cosa, al final se les vuelve a preguntar qué quieren ser, y hay astronautas, hay biólogas, hay ingenieras, hay un poco de todo, porque el escenario es muy cerrado, las opciones son muy pequeñas. Y lo que nos ha funcionado a nosotros es trabajar desde organizaciones de mujeres. Mujeres que les dicen a mujeres, mira cómo ellas lo hicieron y tú también puedes hacerlo. Creo que eso es importante. Y creo que también un poco la parte de la visibilidad, porque muchas mujeres en rubros distintos no se ven, no son visibles. Se ve, como decía Vivian, ¿no? La mujer que tiene el pelo arregladito y la que no es tan femenina, ¿no? Entonces, ese estereotipo creo que es muy malo para la mujer acá. Pero va cambiando, va con fuerza, y creo que estos conversatorios ayudan mucho. En el Perú, las escuelas de arquitectura son el 60% mujeres. 60% mujeres. Entonces, vamos a un camino bien distinto.
Thank you so much, Karina. That was very insightful. What I picked up quickly from what you have said is about the testimonials of other women, sharing, letting them know that it is possible, that we can do this together. We can, be in a male-dominated environment. We can lead, and we can actually, succeed and also have a family life. We can have it all. So thank you very much. And also you mentioned about the visibility, which is one of the things that I'm also passionate about. And that is why we're actually driving this project, so that they could see that there are a lot of women that are actually represented. And I hope that the project that NAWIC is doing under the leadership of Ms. Christine also addresses that, to see more female representatives in advertisement, especially with advertisement with bunnies. A lot of them, I think 80% of the face of all the advertisement, when you look at those, do it yourself, is always male. So if we begin to see more visibility of women in advertisement, then the girls will begin to see themselves in this role. And also we begin to see more of women in, I'm so happy with the Bob the Builder with female version that is coming. I'm going to be one of the first subscribers to that. And I think that visibility is also very important. And also the, not to undermine the role of mentorship is very important, so that you can have somebody to hold your hands while you begin the journey, even right from high school, where the critical decisions have been made. And I also hope that our Latin America counterparts will learn about the role of, engaging them while young, which is, right from the high school is very important, to show them, to demonstrate to them, and to let them know that women can actually be involved in construction. We can climb the ladders, we can carry all the equipment, we can do as much as men can do. So thank you again, Ms. Karina, for that wonderful insight. So I'm moving on to the next question, which talks about gender stereotyping. This is very important. And then I think it's also dear to my heart. And I would like Vivian, Dr. Vivian, if you're still there, I saw you just now, to actually provide us some insights on how we can address gender stereotyping in the construction industry. Vivian? Okay, maybe Vivian, yeah.
Gracias, Temi, por tu pregunta. Considero que pues casi que estamos todo atado, ¿no? O sea, cuando estamos diciendo, bueno, ¿cómo superamos estas barreras, cierto? ¿Cuáles son los retos que tenemos? Y donde uno de estos retos fuertes es el tema de los estereotipos. Entonces tenemos que trabajar en esa capacitación desde pequeños. Yo pienso que digamos, la educación es clave para hacer un cambio en las dinámicas. Si cambiamos desde muy pequeñitos, como les digo, cuando nosotros hacemos estudios de cuando las niñas toman decisiones de estudiar ingeniería civil, pues al inicio algunas lo piensan cuando están en primaria, en tercero, hasta en quinto, pero más adelante van cambiando su perspectiva y su opinión, porque ya empiezan a ver que el estereotipo es de niño, ¿sí? Entonces creo que todo esto va de la mano, son labores que se suman y que definitivamente el generar esta conciencia, el trabajar, perdón, que ya están mis hijos aquí, estamos en hora de casi dormir, entonces mis niños ya empiezan aquí, hey mamá. Entonces creo que el generar conciencia, el dar estos espacios en donde no solo participamos mujeres, cierto, chicas, sino que también los hombres apoyan estos espacios, va a hacer que tengamos una, digamos, mayor difusión, que este estereotipo ya vaya cambiando, que rompamos estas barreras, porque cuando trabajamos juntos, cierto, al final todos, hombres, mujeres, es para mejorar la construcción. Como les decía, cuando nos contaba, por ejemplo, una operadora de grúa, ¿sí? de torre grúa, y ella decía, yo subo en la mañana y pues los hombres hacen pipí allí en una botellita, pero yo no puedo, necesito bajar, ¿cierto? Y bajar de la torre grúa pueden ser 20 minutos, es tiempo, entonces la obra toma decisiones de hacer entonces pausas en medio de la mañana para poder permitir digamos que esta mujer baje y lo haga. Pero esto termina siendo bueno para todos en el sector, no solo para las chicas, también para los chicos que tienen una pausa. El operador hombre de torre grúa también entonces podría bajar, estirarse, ¿cierto? Hacer algún tipo de movimiento que le permita sentirse más vital. Entonces creo que romper el estereotipo es algo que viene desde la conciencia, desde la capacitación y la educación, y entonces cuando empezamos a impactar desde pequeñitos vamos a poder tener, digamos que unas visibilidades importantes en adelante.
Thank you so much, Vivian. That is very interesting to learn about, a few things that we could do about gender stereotyping, which you actually mentioned that we need the support of our male partners. They need to recognize us, they need to appreciate us, and they need to know that we are making an impact as well. So I would like to use this opportunity to invite Dr. Sitimon. He's one of our male representatives here. He's worked a lot in the construction industry. And particularly, I understand that gender stereotype is it's also interwoven or interlinked with sociocultural factors as well. How do we raise, what are those factors in our community? How do we raise up our own community? How do we raise up our children to understand that they are equal partners to male in their workplace environment? So I would like, and also even in our schools, when I studied architecture, and I understand when we work overnight in studios in those days where we don't have computers, we have to share the same studio with men. We sleep on the drawing board in the studios with them overnight and all that. Which I think maybe these days things have changed now that people use AutoCAD, they use softwares, and it wasn't a very palatable experience being a female, lying on the same drawing board or sleeping in the same studio with other male counterparts. And then the way we are being treated, even as females then, wasn't very palatable. I would like to invite Dr. Sitimon to talk about what are those things that we can do, that the male can do. Even in areas of networking, a lot of times women are always excluded. Oh, they need to go and pick up the kids. Oh, they can't come in the evening. But we believe that a lot of decisions are made outside the office. So how, Dr. Sitimon, how can our male counterpart in the industry help us reduce the sociocultural perspectives or issues and also gender stereotyping that women are facing in the construction industry?
Yep. Thank you very much for the question. I'll answer this question and discuss about this based on research that I have read about, and also from the experience that I get when I was working in the industry. Let's start with something close to smallest unit in society, which is family. Yeah, I'm Asian, I'm Thai by birth. I think it must come down to a very smallest unit of the society. Why girls play dolls? Why boys play truck? Why boys has to be blue? Why girls has to be pink? That need to change. Girls can play truck, but in Asia, this embedded still mentality and perception still there. I think it's going to take a little long time to fix, but hoping family unit to fix the way they think might not be enough. It needs a little more reinforcement from school, from the kindergarten. That mentality needs to change from that age, because what you teach in school, it has to go hand in hand with what children learn from the family. Now, moving forward into the working environment, I think I was lucky enough that the company that I work for, as multinational company, I was working as an engineering consultant. So that was my first time that I experienced nearly 50-50 of female engineering colleagues in the company. I see that number for the first time when I get into that company. I was like, wow, this is different from what I've seen before. We need more than that. And one thing that I learned is very interesting. If you go into the site meeting to meet with a very difficult project manager or difficult client, female colleagues tend to soften things, solve problem with a less confrontation. That is skill that male need to learn from, because construction project is full of conflict, but it can be solved in a more harmonious way. At the end of the day, we work together to achieve the project, not your ego, not my ego. This is a project. And the nature of construction industry, we're talking about professional, right? But if we turn our focus to tradeswomen, one thing that we need to acknowledge is that construction industry relying on a lot of subcontractors. Many of them are small company. They don't have that mentality. And many of them, small company, subcontractor, they're SME, they're family run business. So they kind of inherited that old way of thinking. To change that, we need more ammunition. We cannot rely on PPP or CSR as a tool, right? If you impose them, you must employ 40%, 50% female. They can't, because they don't have. Like Christine mentioned earlier, that their excuses, they don't have female in the pipeline. Of course, they're not going to, because if they're still working in the old way, they're not going to have it, and they will not have it. So I think this change is quite tangled right now. It's multidimensional. It has to go hand in hand with pretty much almost every aspect. And unfortunately, the scene that I have seen as a trade woman's work as a labor in Southeast Asian construction industry is not a very beautiful scene. Safety is not there. Equal payment, forget about it. It's not there. And I think the situation is getting better, but there's still a long way to go to the point that we can say it's equal. I think this is why the project like what we're doing right now is so important. And I would like to carry it on, not just only finish when the project finished, because this kind of network, I'm really like to work with Kristen, see what can we as an academy can help in any aspect at all, because creating some change, we are part of the society. I really like, sorry that I cannot remember exactly, we are not finished product, we are under construction. I love that. That's brilliant. That's quote of the day. I'm happy now today that I hear that. It's superb. And I think, yeah, it's developmental. We are doing it. the finishing line is way long way away, but we're going to keep fighting and make it happen.
Thank you so much, Sisimo. That was very insightful. I like the idea that you mentioned that, the family is also, key, into laying the foundation from the home for the boy child to see the female child as being equal, and also for the female child to see themselves that they have the same capability as a boy child. I think I really love that perspective. And I love the perspective that you said, women are good managers. We have both soft and hard approach in how to get people to do what they want to do. A lot of us, we know that even whether our partners or our kids or the people, we have a way to, smother them, and we have a way when we want to pick up the stick and the carrot. So that is why women are really successful as teachers. Go to our primary schools. We know we have the capability. And I hope our leaders are listening to us at this stage to understand that we have what it takes to be a senior management to actually change things and provide more directions for policy interventions. So, Dr. Sitimon also mentioned something about procurement, especially issues around procurement for the small, for the SMEs. So we know that in the construction industry, especially in New Zealand, in the Asia Pacific, where we know that the small companies, which is usually mommy and daddy or family, it constitutes the bulk of the subcontractors in Australia and New Zealand or Asia Pacific. So if these subcontractors are there, they are doing all the project, but they don't have the mindset of where we are going to. So I would like to invite Ms. Christine. Robin, I'm going to get to you. Ms. Christie, to actually talk to us about what is the role of NAWIC, in advocacy to the government about how do we begin to change procurement policies to actually address gender equity in recruitment.
Well, pet topic at the moment, because NAWIC has just put in a submission to the federal government because they're actually doing a procurement into an inquiry into the procurement of Commonwealth infrastructure projects. And our submission was, you keep complaining about skill shortages, but you're not looking in one of the most obvious places, and that is women in the industry, because nobody really knows how to fix the women problem. And quite frankly, after COVID and the fact that the whole lot of industries that women dominate in disappeared almost overnight, whereas a lot of money was spent on construction and infrastructure in our country, they have a really bad image problem in relation to providing jobs for the boys. So for us, it was a really simple solution, and we could actually help the government save face by saying, excellent, why don't you start setting more, not just targets, but mandatory requirements that there are more. So if you want to tender for work for the government, you must have, at a minimum, for example, 25-30% women in the workforce. And then you also need to have in place the mechanisms for ensuring that they stay in the workforce. So that goes down to making sure you have flexibility and all sorts of other, there are a whole lot of other requirements that you could have to ensure that women are cared for want of a better word. And the reason I say cared for is because for a lot of women coming into these industries, look, it is combative, and they're used to putting on their flak jackets, but for that's not sustainable. It's not something you can do for a long period of time. So if you have a government mandated requirement, and we've been lobbying because I live in the ACT, and the ACT government has already set some targets and some goals where there's because there is the Office Women has set an action plan where for industry working is building for the ACT government, they need to have a target that they've set it really low at like 10%, but it's better than nothing. But we are then also working with them to help with the pipeline. So the pathway program I spoke about, but also the mentoring. So a lot of women who are thrown into these roles, or companies pick up women because they go, well, that's what's required if we want to get the work. They don't then know how to nurture those women or look after those women in a way to ensure they stay, which is where now it comes into it. So we will literally provide a mentor one-on-one to make sure that those women have someone else they can talk to, or at least we can also facilitate conversations with their employers to say, do you actually get what it takes to actually employ women? Have you actually given her the appropriate PPE? Have you ensured that you have given her sufficient flexibility? Because as we know, in this COVID environment, sitting behind a desk in an office is no longer a mandatory requirement. Whereas presenteeism in the construction industry is one of the worst problems. You can't possibly leave the office or leave your desk before a certain time because it won't look like you're working. Women have been doing this for ages. We've got the whole COVID thing. It's barely a blip on our radar because we've had to work flexibly for a very, very long time. They're the lessons that the construction industry needs to learn. So when it comes to procurement, when we say, excellent, you must have X amount of women on any project, it's then up to the companies to go, well, how do we make that happen? And that's where NAWIC comes into it. We tell them that we've got a guideline, we've got a shopping list. Here it is. Here's how you can make this happen. Here's how you can support women that you've just employed, particularly if you've never done it before. And the Workplace Gender Equality Agency has tools to actually help companies as well. So we have certain members who follow their guidelines religiously, and they are now employers of choice for women in the construction industry. It's almost unheard of, but it isn't rocket science. It actually just takes the leadership to commit to it. And that's where that partnership with government works. If government says this is a requirement and industry goes, well, hang on a second, give us a bit of time, but we'll get there. And the government insists that is a requirement, because it has to come from the client. And the government is one of the biggest clients. So if the government can't make that part of their procurement policy, we have already quite a few policies that, and the one thing I get cranky about quite often is we talk about social procurement, ensuring that we engage with companies who employ people with disabilities or employ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. Women are 50% of the population. We are not a minority, and we are not a social procurement. We are 50% of the population. So I have that changing the language, things like removing gender out of tender requirements, or when people put in the tenders and we need X amount of men or X amount of, take out the gender out of take all the gendered language out of all tenders and all the tender responses. There's another start. It's a simple thing, but it actually speaks volumes.
Thank you so much. Chrissy, that is very interesting to hear that. The tools are already in place. We have the advocacy groups, we have the policies, we have the guideline, but we still have a little bit of gap. So one of the things I'm thinking is this, okay, we have all this thing in place. Why is it not working? Maybe we need now to probably put together a training team that goes to every organization, whether they are small businesses or they are medium-sized businesses, to actually now say, okay, we're going to sit down with you, train you on what to do and how to get it done, even if it means, changing a bit of your contract and all that. I think that is probably the next step, because we already have the guidelines there, yet there still be this huge gap. So probably we need to bring all this policies and guidelines into their face by engaging, one-on-one with some of these organizations that make up about 70% of the construction workforce. Thank you so much again, Christine. I would like to go to Professor Robin now. So we've heard about all these issues around, women. We have 50% of the policy. We have 50% of the population. We are not minority. We are educated. We're going to school. We have the capacity. We have the capability, and yet we are still underrepresented in a lot of these male-dominated industries, such as construction, mining, and the likes. So, what do you think that? What are the opportunities that we can use, to upskill women in this industry? And what is the role of the government in building people-to-people links, and where we are now, or where do we start, and how do we even begin the journey?
Thanks, Tammy. Well, I think we've heard today really the ingredients of the solution. And, I think what I've taken away from today is the importance of leadership at all levels. Leadership by women and by men, leadership within the construction industry, but also within the educational sector, within the policy environment, so from government, and also leadership within communities and households to really change culture. I think we do have some examples of some industries that have made considerable progress. Karina mentioned earlier that the police in Peru, I mean, that is a lovely story, how it became normalized to have police women. That wasn't normalized before. Cultures change, industries change. And I think the secret is to have those visible role models, to have that strong peer support, all the things we've heard about from the panelists today, and particularly that leadership pushing for what I would call intentional inclusion, conscious inclusion, and making available the tools to make that easy for people who, as Christine said, want to do the right thing. There are tools available, there are approaches available, and I think that leadership is key. This network that you all are building is a fantastic tool for that leadership. I would say that we are a network in construction, and Teme, you have done an amazing job bringing this network together, and I hope that it continues to forge links across people and organizations for real social change in the construction industry. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you so much, Professor Robin. Okay, so just to, it's one very big question that has been on my mind that's actually initiated this project is issues around the impact of COVID on women, especially in the construction industry. So this is where I gave this idea, give back, you know, what can we do? So what I think is important to mention that one of the fundamental lessons that a lot of us have learned out of this COVID-19 issue is the flexibility. Is that flexibility can work whether you're in any industry. Flexibility works, and how do we go about normalizing flexible work arrangement for everybody? So here, we know this project is about women, but we want also, how do we, you know, close that flexibility gap without we women being seen as, oh, when we make flexible arrangement, it's going to, it shows that you are not being as productive as your men. For instance, you want to say, oh, my kids are at a critical stage in their life now. I want to work 4 days a week. Does that mean you know, I'm not productive? Or I want to work from home for 3 days a week. Does that mean I'm going to be less? So what can we do to close this flexibility gap and also reduce the stigma around working from home, or, you know, women are not always available in meetings. They are not always available on site. So this is one thing that I think is going to be important in the coming years, even right from now. That how do we, you know, close that flexibility gap? Noting that only 80% of working men work part-time, where we have 46% of women. That is before COVID, and I'm sure now with COVID is going to be about 78 or 17. I'm not sure about that. And Vivian, that's good. You have your kid. I've got my hair. They are doing their homeschooling at the same time. That's cool. Hi, how are you? So this is interesting, and I want to start with Vivian. Do you have something to say about, you know, how do we close this flexibility gap, and how do we ensure that women are not seen as non-productive?
Sí, yo considero que, como lo dices, el contexto actual nos ha dejado un aprendizaje muy importante, y es, podemos, ¿cierto? Todos, hombres, mujeres, desempeñar nuestras labores desde casa y poder estar un poco más presentes en el cuidado, crianza o pues de nuestra familia, ¿verdad? Como decía Sitimón, por ejemplo, pues el estar en familia, el hacer unas familias más robustas, nos va a permitir una sociedad menos débil, ¿no? Hoy tenemos muchas situaciones. Yo soy directora de carrera y de ingeniería, y a veces llegan casos de los estudiantes que han tenido, no sé, temas, por ejemplo, de intentos de suicidio, problemas mentales, mucha presión, chicos, chicas, aquí es de todos. Entonces creo que este escenario de pandemia nos dejó un aprendizaje, y es, podemos hacerlo, ¿sí? Logramos cumplir con las metas, logramos hacer, digamos que cumplir con ese check de actividades por el día, y nos abre además un horizonte de no solo las mujeres somos las que deberíamos tener un horario flexible, también los hombres, ¿cierto? Porque hombres y mujeres estamos al cuidado de nuestros hijos o con nuestra familia, y así como Colombia es un país en donde se da una licencia de maternidad a las mujeres por 4 meses, pero a los hombres 10 días y chao, ¿sí? Vuelve al trabajo. Si todas estas cosas podemos empezar a permearlas en los dos sentidos, claro, promovidas ahora por las mujeres, como que a nosotras nos toca, pero es un gana-gana. Por eso considero que ese tener conciencia del que estamos hablando es tan necesario. Entonces, ser conscientes que el trabajar desde casa me va a facilitar las cosas y voy a cumplir con mis deberes es una realidad. Ya la pandemia nos permitió como quitarnos ese velo que teníamos, ese estereotipo de que desde casa no puedes trabajar. Y creo que es algo que nos viene bien tanto a hombres como mujeres para que además los dos estemos mucho más articulados en el cuidado de la familia. Entonces, no es solo que yo tenga horario flexible porque soy mujer, también los hombres. En el caso de mujeres, cabeza de familia, que están solas, creo que deberían sí evaluarse algunas situaciones particulares, pero creo que es algo que pues permea a los dos, digamos que en los dos sentidos, o en todos los sentidos.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Vivian. I'm going to throw this question to all the panelists because I know we've all been affected. Dr. Sitimon, what do you think we can do to close this flexibility gap and then reduce the stigma that it's only, only women need to be flexible in their workplace?
This is very difficult to answer, but I think as a Buddhism, I think I like to see the thing from a different perspective. I think COVID and lockdown bring the problems to the surface that made male realize that homeschool is not a fun thing. Yeah, they are now realize that, oh, what mom has been doing is hard. Right now, it is even funnier when my colleagues mentioned that they even have to take turn. Right, Monday is dad day, Tuesday is mom day. I think yes, it is a problem, but it brings us to realization that we are a family unit. We will go into this together, and male will understand female role and responsibility better. In terms of when the time is going back, like Vivian, you mentioned something very interesting. Female got maternity leave is 4 months. Male only 10 days. I think society mechanism also need to be changed at some point. I watched the documentary from the UK a little while ago. One example that one family, the female is really doing very well in her business and in her career. And the whole family need to really sit and have serious discussion about what they're going to do with raising the kid. So the husband decide to, all right, you go ahead to excel on your side. I'll be house husband. Not just only that, for mom or for the wife, it's great, but that decision dragged down the husband into a very, very dark corner because he still think that he being perceived by society that you can't even look after your family and you need wife to. It is not binary. It has to be that or that. It can be together. It can change at any time. We need to change that mindset, I believe.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Sidim. The issue you have touched is really very important, especially when you talked about the Latin American region or the ASEAN region, even within the African region, where the perception of men as being the head and the lead of the family is very important. And I've seen this play out a lot because a lot of times their egos are being bruised and then they just quit. One of the great examples we have is a New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. She's a female and they have a baby, and the partner is the stay-home dad looking after the kid. And we've seen examples of how it's flexible, where she brings in the baby to be breastfed during parliamentary sessions and all that. And I think that is one of our great examples, and a lot of men should learn from a partner. And another one is a US vice president, where the husband, decided to stay at home and resign his job as a lawyer, and they, decide to support the US vice president. I think these are very good examples that a lot of our men needs to learn from. That it's not about bruising your ego. It's not about the perception, the societal perception or cultural perception. It's about how can we make things work together as a family unit to support everyone in the family, or who is even better at doing the job. It is not every female that is destined to be a mother, So who can do the job better? It's what I think the society should be looking at in terms of, running the family and raising the kids. And I would like to call on Katrina Malaga. Are you able to chip in on this issue?
Gracias, Temi. Bueno, yo creo que lo que hace un poco falta, y coincido con ustedes sobre este equilibrio complejo, y la veo a Vivian con el bebé, me hace acordar a mí misma hace algunos años, ¿no? Pero creo que hay una necesidad de cambiar un poco. Mucho tiempo en el Perú el discurso venía de la mujer pobrecita, ¿no? La sojuzgada mujer, la siempre, no sé, disminuida mujer. Y que es un discurso que no cala mucho, ¿no? Creo que un poco la lectura debería ser ahora, nosotros somos fuertes igual, y no venimos de un discurso de menos, venimos de un discurso de igual, no venimos a reclamar derechos, venimos a conversar, ¿no? Ya pasó el tiempo en que peleamos por votar y peleamos por tener nuestros apellidos, eso ya fue. Ahora estamos en un tiempo distinto. Pero creo que de la mano viene la mujer real, porque si tú ves un ingeniero en obra que está desde las 6 de la mañana hasta las 8 de la noche, no le vas a preguntar quién está cuidando a sus hijos, jamás. Vas a decir, qué buen profesional. Pero si es mujer, ya estás pensando, ay, sus hijos estarán solos. Entonces, nosotras tenemos una percepción de nosotras mismas que podemos ser súper todo, profesional, mamá, mujer, regia, arreglada, flaca, y eso no existe y es parte de nuestra propia frustración. Entonces, creo que una mujer fuerte es la que está ahora, ya no es la mujer chiquita, pero una mujer real que se permite estar cansada, que se permite estar molesta, que se permite faltar a alguna actuación escolar sin por eso sentirse muy mala persona y un terrible ser humano. Entonces creo que el discurso ahora, y aún con pandemia, cuando ha habido muchas cosas que ir haciendo en paralelo, es, aquí estamos, ya no exigimos derechos porque ya los tenemos. Ya estamos aquí y somos reales y no somos perfectas y también nos equivocamos, ¿no? Y también nos cansamos, a veces, es en serio, pero vamos a dar la lucha y vamos a venir empujando por contarle esto a más mujeres, ¿no? Y yo de verdad agradezco, este es un espacio maravilloso para ese objetivo.
Thank you so much. That is a very, very impressive and very insightful. And this brings us to the close of this wonderful roundtable discussion. We've learned a lot. We've understood that there are challenges in the construction industry, wherever you are in the world, whether you are in Latin America, you are in Africa, or you are in Australia, or you're in the Pacific. So I would like to round up by saying that the issue around increasing women participation in the construction industry actually calls for a collective effort from all relevant stakeholders in the industry and also in the country, and also the support of our communities. And to address all the issues that have been raised, we need to work together to to foster a collective strategy in order to elevate our women and increase their participation in the male-dominated industry. So thank you very much.